All right, what makes a good startup environment? What makes a good startup ecosystem? Why Silicon Valley is so good at making startup companies, so good at incubating startups? There must be some reasons behind that because many places in the world, not even just in the U.S., try to replicate the Silicon Valley success formula, but I will say it's like none of them are really successful, not even close to Silicon Valley. So why is that so difficult to replicate Silicon Valley? There must be some reason that we are going to discuss today. By the way, if you would like to receive more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. And yes, so recently I think about problem, uh, this for quite a while, and did a lot of research. Found out it actually is like it's very complicated problem. Of course, it's like you couldn't just analyze this by a single point of view. For example, you just analyze this in the talent perspective or in the VC perspective, funding sides. You need to see as a whole because every factors actually highly correlated, highly coupled with the other vectors. So let's just start with the venture capital one. I actually recently read a blog post. It actually said a really good points, and I want to also share with you. It's like, for example, in the Silicon Valley, venture capital, most venture capitals, they know what they expect. They know what they want to expect because they already have a lot of experience of incubating really good startups, and they know they couldn't ask for returns so fast. They couldn't set up milestones for startups. They should set out a grow. They should like look at the results for the long term. It's not like they can get a return in 3 years. They have this kind of mindset. It's more like the infinite mindset. They want to win with the startups. And also, my point of view for this is if you set out a milestones for startups, for example, you need to sell how many products, how many you have, how much revenue a year later or 2 years later, how's your planning, how you're going to scale. If you make up these milestones, you will constrain the startups direction of their products and their business too much because startups start startups are startups because they are doing something really new. Nobody ever done that before, and there's no way you can know where they're going to 2 years later, especially for those very early stage startups. A lot of them, even now today, most more like today, they're doing photo sharing, and next month they pivot, they doing some other things because they found out that's actually not a good problem to solve. So in this case, if you set up these kind of milestones for startups, they will really make those startups fail. I would say just make them fail because you constrain their focus, you constrain their energy to certain direction, and their direction is not necessary to be, in fact, most likely to be a wrong direction. A startup is the organization that constantly searching for direction to go to, and once they find that, they will push it very hard to grow. So that's the mindset the investors should have because Silicon Valley, the people already experience a lot of success, and also the number of startups they are already really big. It's definitely the chicken and egg problem because they have a lot of success and incubated a lot of startups. So it's more like a network effect. The more startups there are, the more VC there are, the transaction value will be very high. Once the value is high, the velocity will also be high. And so then they make a decision make the decisions really, really fast. In this circumstance, it's very good for founders because means if you want to raise funds, if you are doing some product and you see opportunity, you want more money to really, really boost your path, you can raise your fund within a week in Silicon Valley. And the startup, those investors also have very good mindset how they should expect from the startups they invested in. On the contrary, in the other countries, other part of the world, or other cities in the U.S., most investors, they are very more conservative. They really need to drive the return in the short term, and they actually constrain the startups directions too much. So that's why I think it's very hard to replicate Silicon Valley, because this is kind of feedback loop. Once you have those bad investors, bad VC funds, the startups are most likely to fail because the more and more startups fail in their cities. So there won't be more like transactions happening. Then the path of fundraising will be really, really slow. For example, maybe in some cities that is not in the Silicon Valley, people want to raise money, and it takes 3 months or even 6 months to just get a funding, A round or C round funding done. It's like 5 million. It takes them 5 months, and in Silicon Valley, they can be 5 days. So that's the huge difference. The pacing is very different, and also because of the pacing is very slow, there's no many opportunities around. So investors will really think for very long and really expect a high return or like a short-term return, and that will make the startups very constrained and couldn't really search for direction freely. So that's why they have the much higher failure rate, and that makes them make investors more conservative about their investing money. So that just continuously this negative feedback loop. So that's why it's really hard to build another Silicon Valley. First is you need to have some successful examples first, and you also, once you have all successful examples, you will also bring up those venture capitals richer. They have more money to invest the next batch of startups, and they will also have a better mindset. They know how they can exit. It's like maybe 10 years later they got IPO, so it's not like 1-2 years. It's a long game, and they will know how to expect. They can give startups more freedom. That's how it should be, and that's the feedback loop, the positive feedback loop. And they will also, it's very hard to build, and most of cities they try to replicate Silicon Valleys, they just fell into the negative feedback loop. So that's why I think that's super hard. So I don't have solutions for that, and I think there's just a part 1 of my analysis. I have a part 2 why it's so hard, which will involve another factors. I will do that in the next video. So if you really like this topic about startup ecosystem, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And other than that, I will see you next time. Take care.